The Old People, a story by William Faulkner. First there was nothing but the 1-inch backslash. Faint, cold, steady rain. Rain, the gray and constant light of the late November dawn, and the voice off the dogs converge ing somewhere in it. Then Sam Fath Ayres, standing just behind me, as he had been standing when I shot my first running rabbit 4 years ago, touched me, and I began to shake, not with any cold. And then the buck was there. He did not come into sight. He was just there, looking not like a ghost, but as if all of light were condensed in him, and he were the source of it, not only moving in it, but disseminating it, already running, seen first as you always see the deer, in that split second after he has already seen you, already slanting away in that first soaring bound. The antlers, even in that dim light, looking like a small rocking chair balanced on his head. Now, Sam said, shoot quick and slow. I don't remember that shot at all. I don't even remember what I did with the gun afterward. I was running, then I was standing over him, where he lay on. The wet ground still in the attitude of. Running and not looking at all dead. I was shaking and jerking again, and Sam was beside me, and I had his knife in my hand. Don't walk up to him in front. Front, Sam said. If he ain't dead, he'll cut you all to pieces with his feet. Walk up to him from behind and take him by the horn. And I did that, drew the throat taut by one of the antlers and drew Sam's knife across it. And Sam stooped and dipped his hands in the hot blood and wiped them back and forth across my face. Then he blew his horn arid. There was a moiling of dogs about us, with Jimbo and Boone Hagenbeck driving them back after they had all had a taste of the blood. Then Father and Major Despain sitting the horses, and Walter Ewell with his rifle which never missed, from the barrel of which all the bluing had long since been worn away, were looking down at us, at the old man of 70, who had been a Negro for 2 generations now, but whose face and bearing were still those of the Chickasaw chief, and the white boy of 12 with the prints of the bloody hands across his face, who now had nothing to do but stand straight and not let the shaking show. Did he do all right, Sam? Father said. He done all right, Sam Father said. We were the white boy, not yet a man, whose grandfather had lived in the same country and in almost the same manner as the boy himself would grow up to live, leaving his descendants in the land in his turn, and the old man past 70, whose grandfathers had owned the land long before the white men ever saw it, and who had vanished from it now with all their kind. What of blood they had left behind them running now in another race, and for a while even in bondage and now. The Old People, drawing toward the end of its alien course, barren, because Sam Fathers had no children. His grandfather was Ickamotub himself, who had named himself Doom. Sam told me about that, how Ickamotub, old Asatibaha's sister's son, had run away to New Orleans in his youth and returned 7 years later to the plantation in North Mississippi with a French companion called the Chevalier Surblon de Vitry, who must have been the Ickamotub of his family too, and who was already addressing Ickimotub as Duum, and the slave woman who was to be Sam's grandmother, and a gold-laced hat and coat, and a wicker basket containing a litter of puppies and a gold snuff-box of white powder, and how he was met at the river by 2 or 3 companions of his bachelor youth, and with the light of a smoking torch glinting on the gold-laced hat and coat, Doom took one of the pup pies from the basket and put a pinch of the white powder from the gold box on its tongue, and at once the puppy ceased to be a puppy, and how the next day the 8-year-old son of Doom's cousin, Mokta, who was now hereditary head of the clan, Isatibaha was now dead, died suddenly, and that afternoon Doom, in the presence of Moktub and most of the others, the people, Sam always called them, took another puppy from the basket and put a pinch of the powder on its tongue. And so Moktub abdicated, and Doom became in fact the man which his French friend already called him. And how Doom married the slave woman already pregnant, to one of the slaves which he had just inherited, hence Sam Father's name, which in Chickasaw had 2 fathers and later sold them both, and the child too, his own son, to my great-grandfather almost 100 years ago. Up to 3 years ago, he had lived on our farm 4 miles from Jefferson, though all he ever did was what blacksmithing and carpentering was needed. 419. And he lived among Negroes, in a cabin among the other cabins. He consorted with them and dressed like them and talked like them, and went to a Negro church now and then. But for all that, he was still the grandson of that Indian chief, and the Negroes knew it. Boone Hagenbeck's grandmother had been a Chickasaw woman too, and although the blood had run white since, and Boone was a white man, it was not a chief's blood. You could see the difference at once when you saw them together, and even Boone seemed to know that the difference was there. Even Boone, to whom in his tradition it had never occurred that anyone might be better born than himself. A man might be smarter, he admitted that, or richer, luckier, he called it, but not better born. He was a mastiff, absolutely faithful to father and Major Despain, absolutely dependent upon them for his very bread, hearty, courageous enough, a slave to all the appetites, and almost unrational. It was Sam. Fathers who bore himself not, only to, ward father but toward all white men, with gravity and dignity, and without servility or recourse to that impenetrable wall of ready and easy mirth which Negroes sustain between themselves and white men, bearing himself toward father not only as one man to another, but as an older man to aid younger one. He taught me the woods, to hunt, when to shoot and when not to shoot, when to kill and when not to kill, and better, what to do with it afterward. Then he would talk to me, the two of us sitting under the close fierce stars on a summer hilltop while we waited for the dogs to return within hearing behind the red or gray fox they ran, or beside a fire in the November or December woods while the dogs worked out a coon's trail along the creek, or fireless in the pitch dark and the heavy dew of April mornings while we waited for daylight beneath a turkey roost. I would not case time him. He did not react to questions. I would just wait and then listen, and he would begin talking about the old days. 420 Harper's Magazine, and the people whom he had never known, and so could not remember himself, and in place of whom the other race into which his blood had run had supplied him with no substitute. And as he talked about those old times and those dead and vanished men of another race from either, that I knew gradually those old times would cease to be old times and would become the present now, not only as if they had happened yesterday, but as if they were still happen ing, and some of them had not even happened yet, but would occur tomorrorow, so that at last it would seem as if one myself had not come into existence yet, that none of my race, nor the other race which we had brought into the land with us, had come here yet, that although it had been my grandfather's, and was now my father's, and someday would be my land which we hunted over and now rested upon, our hold upon it actually was as trivial and without reality as that now faded and archaic script in one of the chancery clerk's books in the court. House in town, and that it was I who was the guest here, and Sam Fathers voiced the mouthpiece of the host. Until 3 years ago there had been two of them, the other a full-blood Chickasaw, in a sense even more astonishingly lost than Sam Fathers. He called himself Joe Baker, as if it were one word. Nobody knew his history at all. He was a hermit. He lived in a foul little shack at the forks of the creek 4 or 5 miles from our farm, and about that far from any other habitation. He was a market hunter and fisherman, and he consorted with nobody, black or white. No Negro would even cross his path, and no man dared approach his hut except Sam. And perhaps once a month I would find the two of them in Sam's shop, two old men squatting on their heels on the dirt floor, talking in a mixture of Negroid English and Flat Hill dialect, and now and then a phrase of that old tongue which as time went on, and I squatted there to listen ing, I began to learn. Then he died. That is, nobody had seen him in some time. Then one morning Sam Fathers was missing. None of the Negroes knew when nor where, until that night when some Negroes possum hunting saw the sudden burst of flames and approached them. It was Joe Baker's hut, but before they got anywhere near it, someone shot toward them. It was Sam, but nobody ever found Joe Baker's grave. 2 days after that, Sam walked to town and came to Father's office. I was there when he walked in without knock, ing, and stood there the Indian, with the Indian face for all the nigger clothes. One want to go, he said. I want to go to the big bottom to live. Live. To live, Father said. "You can fix it with Major Despain," Sam said. "I could live in the camp and take care of it for you all, or I could build me a little house." For a little while they both looked at each other, he and Father. Then Father said, "All right, I'll fix it." And Sam went out, and that was all. I was 9 then. It seemed perfectly natural to me that nobody, not even Father, would argue with Sam any more than I would. But I could not understand it. "If Joe Baker's dead like they say," I said, "and Sam hasn't got anybody any more at all kin to him, why does he want to go into the Big Bottom, where he won't ever see anybody except us for a few days in the fall while we are Hyundai?" Father looked at me. It was not a curious look. It was just thoughtful. I didn't notice it then. I did not remember it until later. Then he quit looking at me. "Maybe that's what he wants," he said. So Sam moved. He owned so little that he could carry it. He walked. He would neither let Father send him in the wagon, nor would he take one of the mules. He was just gone one morning. The cabin vacant in which he had lived for years, yet in which there never had been very much, the shop standing idle. The old people, now in which there never had been very much to do. Each November we would go into the Big Bottom, to the camp Major Despain and Father and Walter Ewell and Boone and Uncle Ike McCaslin and 2 or 3 others, with Jimbo and Uncle Ash to cook and the dogs. Sam would be there. If he was glad to see us, he did not show it. If he regretted to see us depart again, he did not show that. Each morning he would go out to my stand with me before the dogs were cast. It would be one of the poorer stands, of course, since I was only 9 and 10 and 11 and I had never even seen a deer running yet. But we would stand there, Sam a little behind me and without a gun himself, as he had stood when I shot the running rabbit when I was 8 years old. We would stand there in the Novum BR dawns, and after a while we would hear the dogs. Sometimes they would sweep up and past, close, belling and invisible. Once we heard the 5 heavy reports of Boone's old pump gun with which he had never killed anything larger than a rabbit or a squirrel, and that sitting, and twice we heard from our stand the flat, unreverberant clap of Walter Ewell's rifle which never missed, so that you did not even wait to hear his horn. "I'll never get a shot," I said. "I'll never kill one." "Yes, you will," Sam said. "You wait. You'll be a hunter. You'll be a man." And we would leave him there. He would go out to the road where the Sir Ray would be waiting in order to take the horses and mules back, for now that he lived at the camp all the time, Father and Major Despain left the horses and the dogs there. They would go on ahead on the horses and Uncle Ash and Jimbo, and I would follow in the wagon with Sam, with the guns and the bedding and the meat and the heads, the antlers, the good ones, the wagon winding on among the tremendous gums and cypresses and oaks where no axe had ever sounded, between the impenetrable brakes of cane and briar, the two changing yet constant. The old people, now in which there never had been very much to do. Each November we would go into the Big Bottom, to the camp